Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. I'm so excited to be here with you all. For those that are here for the first time, welcome. For those who are always here, we're happy to see you. The truth is, every single night we're doing something that nobody else is doing. We're not doing superficial cable news talking points. We are not doing drive-by analysis. We are having a deep dive into the biggest issues, the most urgent debates, the most controversial topics going on in the world today. This is a global classroom, and today we are getting it started with some important topics from the campaign trail. Earlier today, President Donald J. Trump, former president, and hopefully never again to be president, Donald J. Trump, gave a press conference. And in that press conference, Donald did what he does. He got up there and he rambled. He sounded like a person who lost their Adderall prescription. And he bragged about his viewers. He talked about what he was going to do for the country. He insulted lots of people, from Kamala Harris to Josh Shapiro, who's not even running for vice president or president right now. He did a lot of stuff. He said, I had hundreds of thousands of people in the stadium. He did all the things you would expect Donald Trump to do. But he looked a little threatened to me. He looked a little nervous to me. Anyway, we're going to talk about that and Vice President Kamala Harris and a whole lot more. I want to bring in a very special guest. You know her. She is a political analyst. She is a legal expert. She is an attorney. She is a motivational speaker. She is a host. She does all the things. Monique Presley, good to see you. I think I lost your audio. I think we did everything. She is everything but a tech person. Let me see. Let's see if we get that audio working.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Talk to me about the press conference. I was watching it earlier today and I saw you tweeting.
I was mostly, that's my therapy in moments like that. When I used to be doing like in trial lawyering in court and people would be on the stand and just bananas, and like I wasn't responsible for the cross-examination. I just had to sit there or watch somebody be grilled by the judge. I would write furiously. And I mean, I could have been writing peas and carrots, carrots and peas. I could be writing my name over and over again. I would just do it to distract me so that I would not just have like a full nervous breakdown. And today was one of those days because I'm watching this small little man be so afraid and so desperate to just get some of the air back from what has been a flawless rollout by Vice President Kamala Harris and now Governor Walz's campaign. And he just needed to get some time, but he didn't have anything to say, didn't really have a vision to share, obviously is not up for the task of talking about heavy matters or anything like that. So he just stood there and did stream of consciousness with his lies and his rambling. And I'm almost thinking about not saying that he's always lying, because it did seem to me today that he does believe those things. So I'm going to now have to go with a bit of pathology, but a larger dose of delusion that is now a part of his whole presentation. Because by the time we got Mark to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm like, what is happening? I will never get these minutes back. So I know. I just had to post. I'm like, I'll never get this time back. This is long.
I got to tell you, the one thing that struck me, and it never sits well with me, is when he talked about her being barely competent. It was early in his remarks. And he circled back to it later saying, San Francisco, she destroyed San Francisco. She destroyed California. I mean, he's given a lot of power to the AG position. And all of it is because of Kamala Harris, but barely competent. It just felt racist. It felt sexist. There's a way that he talks about her. She's far more accomplished than him, far more decorated than him professionally, all these things. And she didn't do it with a silver spoon. So there's the hypocrisy to it, but there's the racist dimension to it that I'm feeling. Did you get that vibe, or am I overthinking this?
Well, he is a racist. For sure. But part of his projection, because he knows that he is not very bright, is that anybody who is, he says they're stupid. And so while I know him to be racist, and while I know him to in particular have an issue with Black women, he calls pretty much everybody who opposes him, the people who he considers to be immediate threats, not very bright, stupid, incompetent, ruin everything they touch. Interesting, today, before he went on to say that he saved HRC from going to jail, he said that she was smarter. I guess that's because he at least now has caught up with the times enough to realize that he's not running against her, though he does obviously still think he's running against Joe Biden and sometimes running against former President Obama.
It seems like he's one president behind, because when he was running against Biden, he thought he was running against Obama. You know what I mean? When you talk about Hillary, it's very weird. You know, when you talk about Hillary, he almost didn't acknowledge Hillary. It seemed like he was running against Bill sometimes, and now he's running against Kamala Harris and talking about Joe Biden. It's a very strange thing. You said something else, and this is why I actually brought you on tonight. You said that she's sort of had a flawless rollout. If you would have asked me that 24 hours ago, I would have agreed with you 1,000%. But something happened yesterday in Michigan. During her speech, Kamala Harris was interrupted by hecklers. We showed it last night. We showed the clip last night. And I won't call them hecklers. I call them protesters. They may have been heckling, but they were there as protesters. And she stopped and said something very important and interesting. She said, and I'm not quoting this verbatim, but basically, if you want Donald Trump to be president, or if you want to vote for Donald Trump, just say that, but I'm speaking now. Mm-hmm. And she shut it down. The crowd erupts. Twitter, certainly Black Twitter, and definitely Black woman Twitter, was loving it. And I understood all the reasons why. Now, I want to just give a little more context, because I think the media hasn't told the whole story. That wasn't the first interruption.
Right.
That was maybe the third from what I've seen. It could be more, but I've seen 2 other interruptions, number one. And number 2, she did meet with that group earlier that day prior to the speech to talk about, by the group's own admission, to talk about a potential weapons embargo, to talk about ceasefire, and to talk a little bit more broadly about the conditions in Gaza. So I don't want to make it seem like protesters showed up, she shut them down, wouldn't listen to them. That's not how it went. All that said, and this is probably where you and I aren't going to agree. When I saw that, I said, I understand why you did that. I get how that's going to resonate with the base. You know, no one wants, shutting down people who are trying to shut you down. Black women in particular are often silenced and disrespected in ways that others are not. For God's sake, I ain't seen them at one Trump rally. And then there's some political reasons for that too, but it's just noteworthy. But my point is, this is not strategically wise, because you're alienating the very people you need in order to have a shot at winning the presidency. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, first, it wasn't just the base that supported her doing it. And thank you for adding the context, because sometimes what happens with media is that they go with the clip. And I mean, and that clip was fire. I don't blame them. That's right. That's a sizzle reel. You should go with it, but it should have the context of she'd already tried 2 other tacks and they were still going. And we're not even knowing at the time that she's doing it, that she's also already met with them and listened, like given time that many don't get right now, in order to directly hear concerns and provide feedback. So with all of that as context, it makes it, to me, makes so much more sense that she did what had to be done to say, but not right now. And for all the people who want to question her Blackness, I hope you have a better understanding. I hope that offer of proof from Counselor Harris was enough for you to understand that there's a certain way we do things that nobody can really do better than us. And she has that down.
There is no doubt about that. When I saw that clip, that was actually, in some ways, my visceral reaction was like, I've seen that look before. I've heard that before. I got a Black mom. I got a Black wife, got Black friends. I've seen that lots of ways.
Yes. I've been on the receiving end of that, and I have delivered it flawlessly for many a year now. So
yes, you have. Now I can fully corroborate that claim. So, but the question becomes, again, if it is that and I'm not saying you have to de-black yourself to run for president. You can't do that. But there's a way that I worry that some people will read that in the same racialized lens we're reading that through, and it'll make her less accessible. It's almost like there's a way that when Obama ran, to be successful, he had to kind of play the middle, not just in terms of his politics, but in terms of sort of how he engaged, the kind of speech patterns he offered, who he talked to, what kind of beer he would drink, what kind of activities he said he liked to do. All of these things was sort of a way to play to middle America. Black women have an even heavier burden and an even harder road to travel to get to this place. Did that response, we're going to get to the politics of it, but even just in terms of the visceral reaction, the emotional reaction, the body language, all of that, do you think strategically that that's wise? Again, I'm just asking in terms of how people will perceive it.
Right. Well, I don't think we have to think about it and guess about it. I think we can look at how people perceived it. It wasn't just the base that appreciated it. It wasn't just Black women, for all of the reasons of all of the ways that we've been disrespected, who appreciated her not allowing for the hijacking of her entire speech, which people had been out in the heat for 8+ hours in order to listen to, not the protesters, but her give her speech. So she wasn't just defending herself or her time, reclaiming her time, but the time of the thousands who were there to hear it, and those of us by extension who were watching and wanting to hear from her. But we also see white men saying, that's strong, that's affirmative, that's leadership, that's presidential, that's commanding. We see the legal community saying, yep, that's how you do it, because what else are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to just sit there and let them take over and time after just, okay, wait until they're finished? Please stop. Would you please stop? Come on, guys. Come on. No, right. That's not what needs to be done. And I would offer up first, you know what? Damned if you do, damned if you don't, because she's going to be the smiling, giggling, laughs too much, get the criticism for unseriousness, right? And then when she shows you, no, remember Senator Harris, who was also AG Harris, who was also District Attorney Harris, and I don't pardon fools. And you can't just come over here and plop like a big thing of shit in front of me and expect me to smell it, which was right. What she said last night. Now they're gonna have a problem with that. No, she's both. And people who come against her need to understand you're gonna get both. And whichever one you get really has to do with the way that you present yourself. And it wasn't a neck roll. It wasn't overly Black, overly angry, overly any of the things that they're going to say. But one of the things that people really need to understand about her is she is very comfortable with herself. She has spent many years in the public eye, and she trusts who she is, which is why she won't back off of her laugh when she feels like laughing, which is why she can smile and be really excited to meet you. And then in the same conversation, say, stop effing around. So yeah. She is all of those things at the same time. And I applaud that, because we've had to do the dance so much, Mark. If we're going to actually move into the future, I think that it has to be with some integrity about who we are and bringing the whole of who we are to the process.
I couldn't agree more with that part. I didn't want her to de-racialize anything. I didn't think it was too black girl, to any of those things. Although I saw some of that on Twitter, I suspect that's from people who just don't like Black women and who probably aren't going to vote for a Black woman no matter what. So I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time and energy trying to comport myself in a way to make some of the dudes in my barbershop vote for you, because some of the dudes in my barbershop ain't voting for you no matter what. And it don't matter who they voting against. You know what I mean? My concern was the second part. And you actually tweeted about this. I'm going to bring it up for a second. You tweeted about this in response to Qasim Rashid, who said, folks claiming she handled it the right way need to understand you aren't the one she's trying to convince. Extra empathy never hurt. She just met with uncommitted movement leaders. And basically what he was saying is, like, you're out here, that Kamala Harris is meeting with people who under Biden's campaign, when Biden was running for president, they were uncommitted and leaning toward no. And you just met with them to say, hey, I'm open to this. Does publicly shutting them down do anything to bring them into the tent? Does it keep them where they are, or does it push them away? I mean, I think that's the fundamental question. You responded by saying, folks claiming she handled it the wrong way need to understand you aren't the one who was being disrespected. She was. And the thousands who came there to hear her, the protesters intended to disrupt. Well done. And they got what they got for their efforts. I hear you on part of that. I don't necessarily see protesting as disrespect in any more than when, you know, they interrupt the President Biden at Mother Emanuel AME back in the wintertime. It's like they are, people may have feelings about what they did to the church, but in terms of the action, I'm talking about in terms of Biden. It's like, I'm protesting the president. It's not personal. There's a genocide going on. You can have a conversation whether it should happen in the church, outside the church, etc. But Biden has a right, or people have a right to protest Biden. People now have a right to protest Trump or Harris or whoever. My concern is, again, a strategic one. And I need to say this because sometimes I think people don't get this. I want her to win. This is a conversation about how we can win, how we can stop Trump. And for me, I don't see a Kamala Harris victory that doesn't include Michigan and Pennsylvania, 2 states where people have pushed for an uncommitted vote. And if they feel like they're getting that there's grandstanding happening, or if they feel like they're not being heard, or they feel like they were heard and then it was pointless because the next day the Harris administration says, well, yeah, we're not really considering a weapons embargo. If they don't feel like it's sincere, then they're not on board. And if the college students, the young people, the Arabs, the Muslims, all the brown people aren't on board, I don't think she wins. So my question is, does this hurt that strategy? That my concern is that it does.
Well, what do you consider protesting in the middle of somebody's speech? It's not disrespectful. It's what? What do you call it? Patriotic?
I think patriotic is overused. I mean, I do think it's. I would say, I think that it.
I mean, as opposed to protesting, and the way we do on the perimeter where we're shouting, we might be singing "We Shall," we might be doing whatever. But when it's inside the speech, and you came in the speech as if you came to listen to the speech, and then you are protesting, it also heckling, because when you're saying genocide Kamala while she's speaking, and saying, that they're not going to vote for her while she's speaking. This is a group she's already met with. But even if it wasn't, let's just take that issue out of it and put it as if it was George Floyd Justice and Policing protesting. It was Roe v. Wade protesting. It was Moms for Peanut Butter protesting. Doesn't matter to me because the issue is technical, right? If you're doing your rightful protesting, freedom of speech, God bless America, while somebody is speaking and everybody around you is trying to hear the speech, how is that not disrespectful? And that's my first question. And then I know it's not my interview, but then second, so I can have a better understanding. Second, what is it that you're supposed to do your third time around with the group that continues to do that about whatever the issue is? Because you want all your voters. So you're not trying to alienate voters. You're trying to handle a moment. What do you do with that?
I think there's a couple things with that. I see it as confrontational. I see it as disobedient. But I don't see it as disrespectful, because it's not a lack of respect that is prompting this. It's a call to action. There are disrespectful chants that can happen. But when you're part of an administration that has actually sort of funded and armed a genocide, even if you're not the president, you're the vice president, I think you got to charge that to the game. I think you got to say, look, we're in this. And I know lots of people in the State Department, lots of people in the Biden administration who have said, like, look, you're making us look crazy out here, right? We want something different. Biden's not listening. I'm willing to separate Kamala from Biden to that extent. But I think that in that moment, you got to own that you were part of that and understand why they are upset. I think you need a little extra empathy. And I think you need a little extra generosity. If I go to and I've done this a million times, if I go to a protest and yell during a speech, I expect to be taken out. By taken out, I mean, just to be clear, in this era, I expect security to remove me.
To be removed, right?
I would not be mad if security removed her. Right? If security had her,
eventually. I mean, she tried to avoid that.
I know, and I'm saying that strategically, I think she would have been better just having security remove them, because when security removes them, That's what they're there for. They there to be like, look, I got kicked out, right? Just like when you go to certain protests, you go there to get arrested, right? Like they want that. So I'm okay with that. I think when she says to them, if you just want Trump, say that. The problem with that is that it makes it sound as if there's no space in her tent for in the Democratic tent, or at least the Kamala Harris tent, for protest and for a principled pushback against the genocide in Gaza. I'm not saying that's how she feels. I'm saying that's how it's communicated. That's what people received, because I'm in those circles, I'm in those group chats, I'm in those text messages, and a lot of people who were looking for permission. Nobody wants Trump, and on the left, I should say, nobody wants Trump. Some people are willing to accept or stomach Trump based on their ideological principles, but people are like, please give me a reason not to vote for this motherfucker, right? And when Kamala comes, when Josh Shapiro was not chosen, I was one of the people squawking about Josh Shapiro, as you know. When Josh Shapiro was not the choice, I said Kamala got my vote. That's all I needed. She got my vote. And I tweeted, and I said, declared publicly, she is showing that she's willing to listen to the grassroots. I'm worried that all of that work that was done was undermined by just that sentence. It can be repaired, but I worry that that wasn't strategically helpful when she could have said, like Joe Biden has done, like Obama's done, like Hillary's done, like others have done, look, this is America. You could protest. They have a right to protest. Let them yell. And then I would have just sat there, gave whatever Snooki, whatever your bodyguard's name is, the wink, carry their asses out, and then kept on going. That's how I would have preferred to see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, now we have the Black woman who didn't do that, so I guess we'll all make the adjustments. We're first of our kind right now, in that we're getting a woman who's going to give you chances, and then gave a signal that she's not going to tolerate it. And she didn't just give a signal for them to go out. She reminded everybody that there is a binary choice happening right now. After she had reminded them that she believes in democracy, but it's time now for her to speak and deliver her remarks. And to me, I mean, it's child's play to not know that when somebody else is speaking, you shouldn't be. It's disrespectful for you to do so. You're going to end up carried out. The fact that you get told about yourself before you get carried out, I hope you didn't come to get carried out expecting to be coddled. I mean, these and frankly, for people in any part of the left to need a reason to not vote for Trump is problematic.
Maybe.
And it's not really a problem that only the vice president and Governor Walz can handle. I will have those conversations, but my patience is running thin. Also, we just talked about the press conference. He's a fool. He's an idiot. He's a racist. He's in cognitive decline. He's an indicted and convicted criminal. Now, if there is a struggle about finding a reason to not vote for him and to vote for somebody who actually cares about any 7 out of your 8 issues, then there's where our work really should begin.
But the key point there that I think has to be remembered, and again, I agree with you. I think I would be okay with somebody voting on the one issue, depending on how affected they are by the one issue. For example, it's hard for me to tell a Palestinian, well, yeah, she's good on the other 7, but the genocide is happening to your family. Like she ain't really handling it right, but vote for it anyway. I can't in good conscience tell a Palestinian to vote for Biden or Harris or Trump or anybody else who they feel is causing or enabling the genocide of their people. But by that same extension, I could say that to people who simply have a moral opposition to it. I think my issue is the consequence of not pulling the lever for Kamala Harris as a practical matter is an outcome that will make things even worse for Palestinians. If Trump were better on Palestine, I'd say, fine, vote Jill Stein, vote Cornel West, get your Trump, right? Or vote for Trump and get your Trump, if the outcome were better. But the outcome for Palestinians won't be better under Donald Trump. In 99.9% of the ways, right? In any practical way, it won't be better. So I'm with you on that. My concern is that you're in Michigan, where you are talking to the Palestinians, you are talking to the Arabs, you are talking to the Syrians and the Lebanese, you're talking to the very people who for whom that 1 out of 8 is home. And so that's why I don't think that that's the best choice. And I think in your speech you should tell people, look, ultimately it's a binary choice. I think that's actually a very good argument for her to make. An argument
that is the argument she was making in the speech. That was the argument she was making in the speech, and that was the argument that she was making when she stopped the hecklers to her speech. Absolutely. She made that argument the whole time. And I think one of the things we have to remember for those of us who support her, which is why even X, where I halfway hate being over there in that hell site, but I am there and more visible of late, is because this country has a woman problem. It has a Black woman problem, but it has more so a woman problem. And women with power, women with authority in this country, we don't go like that. There's a reason why we're the only civilized nation to not have a head of state who is a woman ever in our history. And that is a sickness. And so I think that we have to be careful, no matter how important the issue is, which is why I said, whether it's Palestinians, whether it's Roe v. Wade, whether it's peanut butter and jelly, we have to be careful, because not just white men in power, Mark, but this country, all of us. I'm talking about women hating women. I'm talking about Black men not supporting women. I'm talking about white women not supporting their own, have an issue with making this final decision that women are able to lead and command armed forces, make the gravest decisions of life on behalf of our nation. And so when we see women asserting themselves, we have to be careful to check for our own biases and not spend a whole lot of time on the way a woman does it, as opposed to a way a man could have done it, and whether we would have had the same issue or not. And I'm not saying that it would have been any different here. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But we've seen our prior leaders cuss folks out. We've seen them be rude to media. We've seen them do all kinds of things. And we're seeing the current GOP person just today, that was a stupid question, calling half of the country just depraved and debased. So my caution, and the reason why I'm pushing back, is because I know some of what happens, even when they see something like yesterday, or when she says I'm talking, there's some who does she think she is in it. As that's probably woman, true too. That's a fair point. A Black woman.
I think that's right. I think there is some of that in there, and I think we have to hold space for both points, right? It's how do we critically reflect and self-reflect, right, about whether we, about why we're bothered by this. And then how much of it is, though, a principled worry and fear about losing this election because the stakes are so high? If Kamala Harris, from my perspective, if Kamala Harris had cussed them out, said, get out, I don't want to be disrespectful, I wouldn't care. Go as hard as you want. I'm not saying send the snipers, but like, I'm saying, like, for me, it wasn't it wasn't like the aggressiveness thing. It wasn't she's too aggressive, she's too loud. It wasn't any of that. It was more like, we need these votes. Now, and this is a question I want to ask you before we go. Maybe am I wrong about that? Because I'm hearing some people say something different, which is people protesting, you ain't never voting for you anyway. So you might as well strengthen the internal base, the people you're talking about, the legal community, the Black community, the liberal community, the people who should be voting Democrat but are questionable about women, but maybe they need to see some force from a woman to show that she can lead and command and all that stuff. That maybe it's better to shut down strategically. I'm talking about ethically and morally right now, but it's better to just shut down them people like she did and shore up her base who actually might vote for her, and just chalk the fact that the people in that crowd that shut her down and yelled over her after meeting with her and going over it with her twice, they ain't voting for you no way. So just don't even worry about them. That is another perspective. I'm not giving up on that cadre of people in the crowd. I happen to believe, because they're like me. They're people who, I didn't vote for Hillary. I didn't vote for Obama. For several reasons, multiple reasons. But at this moment in history, I'm saying, what is the best move we can make? What is the best outcome we can get? I believe it's with Kamala Harris. And honestly, if she were a white woman, I'm not sure I'd vote for her either. But because she's a Black woman, I'm saying any doubt I have, I'm going to lean into Black women, because that history has shown that we're better when we do. Right? I'm willing to do all of that, but I'm not giving up on them hecklers being part of the voting base. Am I being too hopeful? is the strategy better to be like, F them, meaning forget them, F them, I'm going to worry about the people inside of my base, shore them up?
Well, I'm just glad you're going to be voting for this Black woman, Mark, so you can at least this time vote for a winning team. I mean, it's been a sad run.
I voted for Biden too. I voted for Biden 4 years ago.
Okay, but not the first Black man president. Okay, Mark. Okay,
listen. Why are you bringing up old stuff? Why
you brought it up?
You gotta let me. You gotta let me
talk. I would have brought it up.
You gotta let me talk.
I'm not. You know, I have decided this year, especially, everybody I can be friends with on the same team with, the stakes are too high. I'm not going back in 2020. I'm not going back in 2016. I am saying, kumbaya, damn it. But no, I agree with you. I don't think we let anybody go. I just think that, which is the thing I said on my show the other day, democracy is not a spectator sport. And so there are things that she's going to be doing, and I believe in her leadership. I am voting for her because I trust her decision making. So she's going to have to make some gut calls, and I am fine with that, including yesterday. But then we're going to be doing some work in our communities. You're right. I'm not going to tell the Palestinians how to vote because they are so much closer to that issue. And I am so much closer to other issues. So, you know, I don't expect a man to be telling me whether Roe v. Wade is my one issue. I'm a woman with a daughter. So like, but I think we can work in our groups. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that's happened in this campaign, whether it's the white dudes, whether it's the guy that wear a purple sock on Thursday. Everybody had a group, everybody had a call, everybody got together with their own reasons about why this next step makes sense. And so I think that within the Palestinian community, they can talk to their own folks. And if you are closer in that community, you can say, yeah, well, I wish she hadn't done it that way. But listen, she took the time when it mattered to meet and have the conversations. And isn't that what we're hoping for? We're not just trying to make a spectacle. We're trying to make progress. We're trying to end this war, whatever the case may be, whatever the right arguments are. Yeah. But I don't think we let anybody go. No, I don't agree with whoever was saying that, because I do think at the end of the day, people go in that voting booth and if they show up into the booth, then there are a lot more people who are not voting for Trump. Now, people staying home out of disgust, what do we do to get people to actually go out and vote and have enthusiasm and energy? I think the campaign is doing a great job with that, but I think we can help.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think I share the sentiment you capture, right? I still think she's the best option. I wish she hadn't done it that way. I know you're not saying you wish she had done it that way. I'm saying that's the sentiment you articulated that some people might be saying in their communities. I'm saying I'm one of them people you talking about. I know what you're saying. You say, I know what you say, but I'm saying, look, I didn't like the way it went down. But I also am not going to allow my frustration with that moment to overshadow the big sort of political strategy that I think we have to kind of hold on to again, which for me hinges on stopping Trump. You know, I don't think Kamala Harris has a good I don't think she's a good position on Israel Palestine at all. And that's based on me talking to her personally, privately, and her public statements. I don't think Biden has one. I don't think Obama had one. I don't think any U.S. president has one. So I just don't hang my hat on. I don't make a political choice based on it. It would be like me saying I'm not going to pick any candidate that takes corporate dollars or anybody that supports. You know, it's like, okay, right? But now what? It just ain't. That's not. It has to be attached to a strategy that's winnable. I'm at a point where I just want to win. I'm not talking about win elections. I'm talking about get our issues solved. And I hope we can get that done. Anyway, Monique, I could talk to you forever. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming. We're going to keep following you on Twitter. And your show, how do we watch it? Where do we watch it?
So the name of it is Make It Make Sense. It's live on IG Monday through Friday at noon Eastern. And then the full episodes are posted on my YouTube channel, Monique Presley TV. So you can catch either place.
All right. Well, will I ever get an invite, or are Green Party members not allowed?
Of course. Yeah, Green Party members are allowed. I mean, you're allowed. I don't know about like the rest of it.
I won't bring Jill. I'll just come solo. with my purple sock. It's Thursday, and I want to be on. I want to invite soon.
Okay, well, I'm at the minute that my producer sees this, Jackie will be sending one your direction.
Done and done. All right, Monique, good to see you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, family. That was the great Monique Presley. Let's move on to another topic. The UK yesterday has been in the news cycle, certainly in our news cycle. Well, today it once again is in the news cycle. Tens of thousands of anti-racism protesters took to the streets of England to counter far-right rioters who were targeting immigration centers. The country has been experiencing days of violence, and the violence has been sparked by the spread of literally deadly misinformation about a deadly stabbing attack. The far-right groups have been rallying people on social media, calling for protests, targeting visa processing centers and the offices of immigration lawyers at more than 100 sites across England. But the far-right mobs were met by thousands of counter-protesters who are protecting asylum centers and other sites. And let's be clear, this all starts because somebody gets stabbed. And of course, when somebody gets stabbed, who do they blame? They blame Muslims. Who do they blame? They blame Arabs. Who do they blame? They blame brown people. But it turned out it wasn't some asylum seeker. It wasn't an immigrant from outside the borders of the nation. No, the person was born in the UK. And yet it didn't matter. The angry xenophobes were out in the streets, and people like Elon Musk were stoking the flames. They were out there talking about, oh my God, a civil war is inevitable. And when people like Elon Musk say that a civil war is inevitable, it makes people feel like a civil war is inevitable. That's how you end up with January 6th here in the United States. Because people who are angry, filled with misinformation and disinformation, they do something wrong. They do something dangerous. They do something wrong-headed. They do something that they wish they could take back later. But in the moment, it feels right. And Elon Musk is telling them that it is right. And so it is so good that those people who took to the streets to be xenophobic and racist and hateful were counter-protested by others. The only way that we can defeat racism is through structural interventions. The only way we can defeat racism is to stop a system that economically exploits and benefits from the racialization of people. We can't march our way to ending white supremacy and racism. But what we can do is organize and struggle and strategize together, and that happens in the streets. So I'm glad to see all them people out in them streets. Anyway, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk to you about a far-right Israeli minister who said something crazy, even for a far-right Israeli minister. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on the other side. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. Hit the like button if you like what you see. Hit the subscribe button if you're here and haven't subscribed. Don't just be lurking in the classroom. Come join the family. Also, family, drop in the well what you think about what we've been talking about so far, especially my conversation with Monique Presley. Did you agree with her that Kamala Harris handled it fine? Did you agree with me that, maybe she could have dealt with that a little bit different? What do you think? Drop your comments in the comment well. Let us know what you think. And, of course, make sure you follow me on IG with the @ Night School MLH. The MLH, of course, stands for Marc Lamont Hill, not Miss Lauren Hill. You know why? Because I show up on time. Anyway, let's go. I'm just being petty today. By the way, y'all always ask me where the shirts come from. This shirt it says Jefferson Cleaners. That's a cleaning store up in Harlem. It's not a real cleaning store. You should know what this is from if you're old enough, or if you got locked inside the house and weren't allowed to watch TV. Drop it in the comment. Well, I might give you a bonus question if you do. Anyway, drop your questions in, drop your comments, and I'll be doing a special live Q&A after this later tonight. So if I don't get to your super chat, your super question, your super chat, your super sticker, or your super thanks, don't worry about it. I'll jump to it on the other side. But make sure you drop this stuff into the well. Let's keep going, though, because there's a story that I have to talk to you all about. A far-right Israeli minister is currently being slammed by Western allies. Why? Well, he suggested that starving to death 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, it's not just happening. He argues that it's moral and that it's justified until the hostages are returned. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said, unfortunately, Israel had no choice but to send humanitarian aid to Gaza. Speaking at a conference in support of Jewish settlements, the minister said this: it's not possible in today's global reality to imagine a war. No one will allow us to starve 2 million people, even though that might be just and moral. That might be just and moral until they return the hostages. Now, I need to give y'all some quick context here. One, that's just disgusting on its own. But Benjamin Netanyahu has always been trash as a prime minister. He's always been on the wrong side of issues. He's always skirted international law. He's always disrespected humanitarian conventions. Benjamin Netanyahu represents all that is bad. But when Benjamin Netanyahu was able to return to office, resume the prime ministership, he was only able to do so by forming a coalition, because you don't just get elected prime minister. There's a coalition that needs to be built within the Knesset, and he needed to have a coalition of people to keep him in power, and that coalition is moving him further and further to the right. So as disgusting as Netanyahu has been in this most recent term, he now has been pulled to the right by people like Yoav Gallant, by people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, and by people like Bezalel Smotrich, the person we're talking about right now. These are people who don't even pretend to want a two-state solution. These are people who don't even pretend to believe that Palestinians are entitled to any land. These are people who simply want Palestine to go away and Palestinians to die. And that is why what you heard from Bezalel Smotrich today is so disgusting. And the Biden administration even called it out. And that's how you know it's bad, because the Biden administration usually don't say nothing against Israel. But today they called it out. The Biden administration called the remarks appalling. The European Union condemned the remarks by reminding Israel, quote, the deliberate starvation of civilians is a war crime. It's crazy that you have to remind people that you can't starve people. Britain's new foreign secretary, David Lammy, also responded, posting this on X. There can be no justification for Minister Smotrich's remarks, and we expect the wider Israeli government to retract and condemn them. I'll hold my breath for that. Germany's ambassador to Israel, Stefan Silbert, called the remarks, quote, unacceptable and appalling. Egypt's foreign ministry described the statements as shameful and unacceptable in form and substance. Unacceptable in form and substance. They also added that, quote, irresponsible statements create incitement against Palestinians in Gaza. That's right. It's not just disgusting and deplorable. It's also illegal. But it's not just illegal. It's also dangerous. And you set the tone of saying that these Palestinians deserve to die, and feeding them isn't necessary, and feeding them, it might be moral and just. Not feeding them is moral and just. Starving them is moral and just. When you send that message, it makes it easier for humanitarian aid trucks to not make it through. It makes it easier for people to shoot them. It makes it easier for global humanitarian efforts from groups like the World Central Kitchen. It makes it easier for them to get killed in cold blood. It makes it easier to watch the misery if you think that Palestinians deserve it. What Smotrich said, though, is not an outlier. I'd love to believe, and the world would love to believe, that he is the exception to an otherwise normal, liberal, diplomatic, progressive rule. No, 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 no. This man is full of evil and animus and hate toward the Palestinian people, but he is not isolated. The dominant Israeli policy position toward Palestinians is let them starve. The dominant Israeli policy position toward Palestinians is let them die. We got to do something about that. Right now, we ain't doing much. The Israeli minister, finance minister, as we're talking about right now, Smotrich, the defense minister, the prime minister, for God's sake, they all must be held accountable for not just their statements, but the policies that come and are reflected by those statements. They all must be challenged. All right, y'all. Another story that we got to get to. Longtime Trump ally Stephen Miller. Y'all know Stephen Miller. He's the person that goes around spreading lies in favor of Donald Trump. Well, Stephen Miller went on to MSNBC to spread more lies, this time about the election, not the current election, but the 2020 election that they just can't seem to get over, and January 6th, what they just can't seem to be accountable for. Miller went on an unhinged rant, at one point accusing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris of child sex trafficking. Fortunately, though, for once, a U.S. media host didn't just sit there and let the guests talk crazy out their neck. Instead, the host, this time Ari Melber, he wasn't having it. Check out this exchange.
You wrote that in on Pence. You played it all the way up to January 6th. You know what happened after that. A lot of other people have been convicted of crimes, Stephen. A
lot of innocent people have been persecuted by a corrupt system. What kind of corrupt system throws Republican lawyers in jail for offering good, sound legal advice, but does nothing with secretaries of state who plainly violated their own state laws and constitutions? How many people are in jail right now? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the #1 traffickers of children, girls into sex slavery on planet Earth. Okay. How many people are in jail
we've
for that?
Gone this far, and we've gone this far in an exchange. We're not doing just anything you want to rip off the internet that's false, and we're not doing defamation here. As you know, there's other Trump allies who've gotten a lot of trouble for that. We're not doing that here. You want to talk about democracy. You sound right now. I'll let you respond. We are running over on time, but you sound more outraged about what. Stephen, I'm going to finish the question. I'll give you time. You sound tonight more outraged about what you allege is that double standard, and I've given you time to explain it, than the people who battered the cops and led to deaths and stormed the Capitol. I know in your deposition, because I looked at it, you said you were against the violence. You haven't gotten around to saying that here tonight. Again, it's your time when you answer. But you sound more outraged about that than the actual convicted sedition at the Capitol that day, which, by the way, Donald Trump has floated the idea that he would pardon the seditionists who stormed the Capitol violently. We're running over on time. I will give you a chance to respond to all that.
Yes. I, President Trump, and everyone else have been repeatedly clear about the fact that any violence that took place was unacceptable. That is completely separate and different from throwing a grandmother in jail for 5 years who just said a prayer in a hallway after being ushered in by a Capitol police officer and then left. The weaponization of the government. There's a guy who posted a meme about Hillary Clinton who's in jail right now. Mackey. The weaponization of government is the beginning of the end of American democracy. And every one of your viewers and listeners should understand, when you have a country where you can throw people in jail for violations of misinformation, for engaging in free speech, for engaging in good legal advice, for challenging illegitimate election results, you're not a free country anymore. And I'll tell you the violence I'm outraged about. Right now, there are moms whose daughters are dead and murdered because Kamala Harris let in their killers. And when you have on your program the mother of Jocelyn Nungry, or the mother of Laken Riley, or the mother of any of the other victims, the mother of the girl who was raped in Central Park, any of those families, then you'll be in a position to talk about violence and suffering and death.
I told you I'd give you time. We're not doing a comparison of me to you on everything, but we've given you time so people could hear, as you said, directly from you. That's something we do here. And we've given you a lot of time, and I appreciate the dialogue. Stephen Miller from the Trump campaign and the Trump White House veteran. Thank you, sir.
Sometimes you just got to let a fool talk.
They're called bionic boomers.
Sometimes
seniors.
You got to just let a fool talk. Stephen Miller, by the way, the first thing you want to know is, yes, he sounds insane. He sounds unhinged, calling Biden and Harris child sex traffickers, and basically, like Ari Melber said, stripping all the craziness off the internet, balling it up into one soundbite and spitting it out. But the fact that he's this crazy and saying crazy stuff would be an afterthought, except that he worked in the Trump administration. He was responsible for immigration policy. Remember the ban era, when the Muslim ban and the this ban and that? That was Stephen Miller. So please understand, the crazy person you just heard is the person that Donald Trump believed should be making foreign policy and domestic policy decisions, really domestic policy decisions about outsiders. And then he's now a primary campaign surrogate for Trump. So Trump is saying, this person who says crazy things, who traffics in internet conspiracy theories, was good in the past, and after assessing his record, I still think he was the right choice, and I'm going to move him forward for another round. What's it going to be next? Secretary of State? So please understand what you're getting into when you choose Donald Trump. You're getting craziness like this. But shout out to Ari Melber for actually standing up and speaking out and saying, look, we're not going to allow you to just say anything. Now, part of that is protecting their own legal interests. Like you said, we're not doing defamation here. We're not going to do defamation here. But beyond that, the media has a responsibility to tell the truth. And it's not just my responsibility to tell the truth. It's my responsibility to not allow people on my platform to lie. Because if you trust my platform and you trust that I traffic in truth and the people here don't traffic in truth who are talking, then you know what ends up happening? You end up believing them on my back. You end up believing them on my watch. And that cannot happen. So shout out to Ari Melber for shutting it down. But also let's point out another thing that Ari Melber pointed out, which I think is important. The outrage that these people show about things that did not even happen. The disgust and the moral dismay that these people confess every single time that something happens. From a Democrat, or from a liberal, or from a progressive, or from a radical, from a Green Party member, from a working family member. They can see the failure in all of that, but they can't just speak out against an invasion of the Capitol on January 6th. They can't. They love the police. They worship the police. They have a whole Blue Lives Matter campaign, and yet these people came in and beat up the police too, and they got nothing to say about it. Donald Trump says he's going to try to pardon them. And no, he wasn't talking about the ones that are innocent. They've all been convicted. The ones he was talking about. So instead of talking about sex trafficking that didn't happen, and again, we should be on top of sex trafficking that did happen to address it and to eliminate it. It's disgusting. It's indefensible. But this dude is trafficking in them QAnon fake conspiracies and these fake trafficking allegations when real allegations are right in front of him. They beat up cops. They created the conditions for the death of other people. These are seditionists. Y'all supposed to be so patriotic, and yet y'all come out here talking crazy. So I'm glad that Ari Melber shut him down, that he smacked him down, that he said, we not going to deal with it. And also, like he said, we ain't going back and forth. We are not peers. I'm done. You said what you said. I gave you fair time. It's a wrap. That's how you got to do it. In fact, I would do it even harder next time. That's all I got to say about that. All right, y'all. One more quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your favorite rapper that you love to hate. Stay here. Welcome back to Night School. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Let the YouTube algorithms know that you're rocking with us tonight. All right. Kanye West is back in the news. Kanye's former chief of staff is alleging that the rapper's dentist got him hooked on nitrous oxide, and Ye is now paying $50,000 a month for a steady supply of the gas. I shouldn't laugh at this. Milo Yiannopoulos has been sounding the alarm on X with multiple posts about his concern for Kanye, or Ye, the person formerly known as Kanye, now known as Ye. Check out this post. He said, "It was my job to protect Ye from bad guys since he is all heart and, to be quite honest, just doesn't and can't see them coming. I should have seen the dentist coming and stopped him sooner, as I did with so many others. Having said that, there's no doubt in my mind that had I not intervened, Ye would have been Michael Jacksoned in May of this year. I accept that my friendship with Ye is probably over forever now, but my conscience is clear. Okay, so wow. First of all, I don't know if this is true or not. I can only report that his former chief of staff says that it is true. $50,000 a year for gas is wild. Now, we all know that earlier in the year, Milo Yiannopoulos made other claims, kind of blew up their relationship, talked about Kanye wanting to make porn and talking about all these other things with Kanye. But now he's saying that Kanye has an addiction. I hope Ye does not have an addiction. So like I say, I hope he doesn't have an addiction. I hope that Ye is healthy. I hope that Ye is okay. But a $50,000 nitrous oxide addiction is crazy. First of all, I don't know anybody that goes to the dentist and just gets hooked on drugs. But if that is in fact the case, that's wild. And to have a $50,000 addiction of any sort is really disturbing. I pray that Kanye is okay, but if he's not, I pray that he gets help. Because the problem is when you have a lot of money, you ain't got to have billions, and Kanye ain't got billions. But if you got a lot of money, you can afford your addiction. So you never really hit rock bottom in the same way as you do when you gotta, live under a bridge or commit sex acts that you don't want to otherwise commit, or that you're stealing from your family. So if Kanye is dealing with this issue, I'm afraid that he won't have any kind of motivation to stop. I also hate that Kanye is surrounded by people who, when the rubber meets the road, they go public and put his business out there. Again, I don't know if it's true or not, but if Milo, his ex-chief of staff, is saying it, that means that you're willing to do something in public. He's not doing this to save Ye, I don't believe. It feels like this is a lot to do with saving you, giving you attention, getting you clicks and likes. And then on top of that, Milo Yiannopoulos be saying wild stuff. I've heard him say anti-Semitic things this year. I've heard him attack other public figures. I've heard him attack black folk like Candace Owens. I've heard him do all the things. So we got to take this with a grain of salt. But I hope that Kanye is okay, because if Kanye is dealing with mental health issues and Kanye is dealing with other issues, and you add a drug addiction of any sort, including nitrous oxide, then it's not going to get much better. So we hope Ye is doing well. We hope this is not true, but if it is true, Ye, we hope you get all the help you deserve. All right, family, we got time for one more story. Because y'all deserve it, and y'all so good to me. One of y'all correctly guessed Jefferson Cleaners from the Jeffersons. It is where George Jefferson worked. And before it was on the Jeffersons, it was on All in the Family. That's when he only had one store up in Queens, right off of Hauser Street, if you really know your sitcom trivia. All right. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Tim Walz. Republicans have attempted to attack Governor Tim Walz, vice presidential hopeful Tim Walz, for his response during the George Floyd protests. And like a lot of things Republicans are doing lately, kind of backfiring. In fact, it's backfiring in spectacular fashion. Republicans seized on the protests, saying that Walz let Minneapolis burn and that people were running wild all over the city, that it was an out-of-control city from a liberal governor, and that he did an awful job. A disaster. But as always is the case, the truth finds a way to get to the surface. Donald Trump has a tape that resurfaced. And on the tape, it doesn't really go along with what the GOP is saying. Listen to Donald Trump not criticizing Walz, not saying it's a complete disaster, which is what he says about everybody, but actually praising Walz during a phone call from 2020. Also, take note of Walz's genuine concern over what sparked the protest. Listen to this.
Governor Walz is on the phone, and we spoke, and I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days. I asked him to do that, and the whole world was laughing. 3 days later, I spoke to the governor. The governor's, I think, on the call, and he's an excellent guy. You've got a big National Guard out there that's ready to come in and fight like hell. I tell you, the best, what they did in Minneapolis was incredible. They went in and dominated. And it happened immediately. Tim is on the phone now. Tim Walz. Again, I was very happy with the last couple of days, Tim. You called up big numbers, and the big numbers knocked them out so fast it was like bowling pins.
Our city is grieving and in pain. And I would just say, as far as the potential, the peaceful protesters who are expressing an outrage that is real. They witnessed 8 minutes of a man dying in front of them. At that point in time, I did something unprecedented. I mobilized the entire Minnesota National Guard, and that's what the president was alluding to with the size of the force was capable. But I think, again, Mr. President, you asked on explaining this. I would just say it's going to be very difficult. There are bad actors in this, but there is such a legitimate anger. Our real dilemma here is the transition back is to the catalyst that sparked this across the country, and that was what happened with the Minneapolis Police Department. So what we did is a lot of this, what you saw yesterday, was engaging civic leaders and the peaceful protests. And I would just close with, I think the guidance is you got to get a handle on it with that force. That is absolutely correct. And then the transition in the next phase is trying to get those spaces for the peaceful protests. And I'm happy to do things that we have to look at of how do we get reform.
Wow. That did not go the way they wanted it to. Now, you know, Donald Trump wasn't listening, and he was like, snooze after about 4 seconds because he has the attention span of a gnat. But you can't say Tim Walz destroyed Minnesota, set Minneapolis on fire, was irresponsible, when you got audio of Donald Trump saying, I praise the guy. He's an excellent guy. He didn't just say he did a good job. He said, I fully agree with the way he handled it. I fully agree. So if you don't like the way Minneapolis went after George Floyd, then you got to be just as mad as Donald Trump, because Trump was president and Trump fully agreed with how it was being handled. Fully agreed with how it was being handled. So they got nothing on him. But here's the part I like. It's not just the fact that Republicans look stupid for making that claim. It's the fact that Walz didn't just earn Trump's approval by being a warmonger or a repressive state administrator. He got the love and respect of Trump, which I don't give a damn about. But he also got his opinion out to Trump. He said they're there for a legitimate reason. He said there might be some bad actors, but people are here because they saw a man die in front of them. He honored George Floyd. He acknowledged that the death of George Floyd was wrong. He acknowledged that the protest was legitimate. And he said, we got to change policy so that this don't happen again. So he took a principled stance. He created order that nobody could disagree with, but he still said the protesters were right. George Floyd's death was wrong, and we got to do something about it. So he was able to address the issue, silence his political opponents, and call for justice. That's what I need to see more of in this country. All right, family, thank you for watching Night School. It's been such a pleasure hanging with y'all tonight. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the join button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit all the buttons, and I'll tell you why. When you hit the like button, it lets the YouTube algorithms know that you're watching, and it allows independent grassroots media like me to compete with them corporate media outlets. When you hit the subscribe button, it increases our social media footprint so that more people can get access to this content. And when you hit the join button, if you're so inclined, you become a monthly member of the channel, which gives us the financial stability we need to do the work that we do every single day here for free. So please hit the join button if you can. But if you can't make a monthly commitment, make a one-time commitment. Go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Consider it your night school tuition for the month. Go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and drop whatever you can drop. If you drop $1, we're grateful. If you drop $10 or $100 or $1,000 or $1 million, we are all super grateful. But what we do ask is that if everybody watching right now were to give the $10, if everybody watching right now were to donate $10 to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, we would be able to meet our financial goals for the month. We'd be able to continue to produce Night School Monday to Friday at 9 p.m., Office Hours, the intellectual deep dive on Sundays at 9, Coffee and Books every Saturday morning at 9. The Classroom in the Cell podcast with political prisoner Mumia Abu-Jamal every Sunday at 9 a.m. We'd be able to put out all the content that you see on the channel and pay our staff and put out more content and invest in building a new studio. We could do all of that if everybody watching right now could donate $10 for the month. So consider it. But again, if you can't, that's okay. Give what you can. And at the end of the day, what matters most is that you watch this content, that you like this content, that you subscribe to this content, and that you share this content. And most of all, that you study this content, because that's what night school is all about. All right, family, I'll see you tomorrow night. Peace.